Welcome to this new session, this third episode of the Salon of Classical Architecture. Today we're going to be talking about the Acanthus Leaf. It's going to be a sort of a small journey or small long journey across this wonderful feature of classical architecture. So as I said, today we're going to talk about the Acanthus Leaf and then our usual question time. So the Acanthus Leaf. The acanthus is probably the most elaborate ornament in classical architecture and one of the most elaborate ornaments from in architecture in general and in decorative arts as well. It has transcended beyond its natural origins to have become a proper artistic feature on its own that doesn't always look exactly like its origins, because when we talk about the acanthus leaf, we're talking about a natural element. We're talking about this plant, Acanthus mollis. This is the original Acanthus leaf and looks like this. So probably most of, or especially all of you who are from Mediterranean Europe, you have seen this plant growing around almost as if it was wheat, because that's what it is. It's just a plant that grows around naturally. You don't need to plant it. You don't need to import it. In other areas, it grows as a garden plant. You can grow it as a garden plant, the acanthus leaf is basically a wheat, a mala hierbas, we would say in Spanish. It just grows naturally, and that's the shape that it takes. It's also highly poisonous. Not if you touch it, but if you make some components out of them, it can be toxic. So don't eat the flowers, please, when you find them around. So this is the leaf that was surrounding the basket on which Callimachus used as an inspiration for the capital, for the Corinthian capital back in time. So, and the story of the Corinthian capital, as you may remember, if not, here we are to talk about it once more time. Callimachus was a very famous sculptor. Callimachus was one of the historical historical precedents of the orders. We can say that while the Doric and the Ionic have sort of mythical origins, because the structure that come from timber into stone, or the hairstyle of the ladies in Ionia, but we don't know exactly where they come from, or when you can claim the first one. With Callimachus, because we know that Callimachus was an historical person, we can put a starting, at least to the legend, because if we go to the history and archaeology, we have Corinthian capitals from before the alleged times of Callimachus, but the truth is that we have Callimachus as a sort of the person who settled the Corinthian order, as we know now. So Callimachus was wandering outside Corinth, looking for ideas to create a new capital as had been commissioned by the city council. And Callimachus found this element that you can see on the left. This is a basket, and inside the basket is a sad story. The basket contained the remains of a young lady who had died recently. There was not the flesh remains, it was the ashes. Remember that in antiquity the bodies were cremated, and the family didn't have money to create a proper monument, so they just had to put the remains in the basket together with some offerings. And to prevent vermin and animals and insects entering into the basket, they put a stone slab on top. Now, this happened in winter, and for those of you who live in Southern Europe or around the Mediterranean, you know that winters are not uh, white. Winters are brown, or in the best scenario, green, as soon as it starts raining. So probably the family, when they deposited the basket, it was dry around, there was not much growing on, and then eventually, when Callimachus was walking, which was a spring, a plant has started to grow around. An acanthus plant, and as we were saying, the acanthus just grows everywhere. So the acanthus was growing just below the basket. And the leaves started to grow around, surrounding the basket. And eventually, once they reached the tip or the top of the slab, they bend it over. And that's what Callimachus used as the idea. You can see very clearly on the image on the right, where you can see a little bit of the basket in the upper part. You can see the stone slab very clearly as the abacus of the capital, and then you can see the acanthus leaves growing gradually around. That's the origin of the Corinthian capital, and obviously, as a homage to its origin, the bearer of the idea, this young lady who died, the Corinthian capital represents femininity, represents grace, represents slenderness, and it has become the order to also represent beauty. So it's the most beautiful of the three orders because of the delicacy of the acanthus leaf, the most expensive to carve together with the composite, which has been also associated over the years with a luxury. So initially, the Corinthian capital was associated with beauty, with femininity, with virginity, and therefore the Corinthian order will be an order for Venus, would be an order for Aphrodite, would be an order maybe for Apollo, but that was in Greek times, and the Romans very quickly they converted into an order to use to show off and for luxury. That's why we'll see, for example, that the Temple of Mars Ultor in Rome is dedicated to Mars, which should normally get a Doric order, but Augustus did it in Corinthian to show off the power. Or Louis XIV, the Sun King, we should have been identified more with the Doric order, used the Corinthian profusely in Versailles. And as I was saying, I mean, the Corinthian order is characterized by the acanthus leaf, and any order basically containing acanthus leaf in different variations is what we could call Corinthian. The Corinthian, as we know nowadays, using classical architecture, is a Roman Corinthian, which was more or less standardized in Roman times, and is the one that Vignola uses. For Vignola is the order of the Temple of Antonino and Faustina. That's the canonical Corinthian order. We have here, I mean, this is a sketch from Quinlan Terry. How could have been the potential evolution of Corinthian capital in a much more archaeological way? So there are thousands of hypotheses in many cases. You will see that the one to the left, marked letter A, you see even in postmodernist buildings, it was heavily used back then because it was considered like a wink to the origin of the orders, and you know how the postmodernity was about winking. With regards to the Corinthian capital itself, there are basically two types of acanthus leaf. You have like the flat acanthus leaf, which is an abstraction of the elaborated acanthus leaf, and you have like the proper elaborated acanthus leaf. And you use normally this one in situations in which the capitals are going to be too high to appreciate the detail and intricacy of the leaves, or when you don't have much budget but you still want to go Corinthian, you go for this. It's a bit like you go to a luxury brand and you buy the most expensive of the range, or you buy the economic range. It's something a bit like that. This is the temple of Zeus in Olympia, one of the earliest. So the temple of Zeus in Athens, apologies. One of the earliest examples of Corinthian order, one of the biggest temples used in Corinthian order. You can see how the columns are scattered around, and here you can see compared with a person the size that they could have get, and you can see that the columns that are surviving is just a little part of the outer ring and part of the inner cella. So it was a massive temple. As I said, this is the temple of Venus Genitrix in Rome, the temple in Julius Caesar's forum, and we can see that you can see the acanthus both in the capital and in the frieze. All these spirals that you see around are variations of the acanthus leaf, and how they scroll and they continue when the plant has been now completely converted into an abstract motif that doesn't have any bearing with reality. While still in the capital, it resembles a little bit the whole legend of the origin of the capital. When you go to much more elaborate ornaments, any similitude with nature is just pure coincidence. Corinthian capital would continue to evolve. I mean, its character as the most ornate of the orders would confer a certain prestige And also the fact that the Corinthian capital, together with the Doric, they can almost be seen from every angle. There are 360 capitals, so you can place them almost in any way that they're going to look good, which was okay for when they were being reused since the early Christian times. In many cases, they would be at another abacus on top, but that abacus would be quickly absorbed as well. We're going to be seeing some examples, and we're going to see something interesting that happened as well with the capital. The leaves start to get more and more deep. The leaves get deeper, and they start being carved in a process called trepanation rather than just mere carving. And this is a very good, beautiful early example of what you could call trepanation. We could call this a composite capital, and this is in Hagia Sophia, and this is 7th century, so it's a very early deviation from the canon, and it is and it isn't a deviation because the volute is still carved following the rules. The acanthus are more or less carved following the rules, but the disposition of all the elements is completely new and different. So that's a bit of what makes the adaptation of classical architecture to Middle Ages through all the late antiquity, and also see the craft required to build this capital. This leaf has been carved, and all the space behind has been left hollow. It's a very, very, very beautiful technique, very expensive, and only you can do it with certain types of stone, namely marbles. You cannot do it with granite. You cannot do it with sandstone. You could do it with limestone, but only but marble and limestone are the only ones you could use. See also the ring around to provide extra stability to the column. And here are some examples of what you could call late antiquity Byzantine capitals, and obviously in all of them, except in the one named as E, the Acanthus Leaf takes a prominent role. So the Acanthus Leaf will be the companion of architecture during the whole Middle Ages, although through different variations. We could say that that was the legacy of classical architecture through all the Middle Ages, even through Gothic architecture. These capitals that you can see here are from the royal tombs of the Merovingians in France, and all of these are capitals that were carved ex professo for this. They are not capitals reused, they are capitals carved for this, and you can see that they are like a clumsy version of the Corinthian and the composite. So, but at the same time, while the overall composition is clumsy, the individual elements aren't, and that's the important thing to bear in mind. These are capitals from the Palatine Chapel in Aachen, where you can see how the Acanthus leaf, even in 9th century, was still retained as a properly classical feature. This is not a capital that was recycled, that was reused from another building. This is a capital that was carved new for this case. I'm going to see another one from the capital. I mean, what it is said, there is an inscription that says that some capitals were brought from Ravenna to Aachen to serve as models for the capital. This is the gate of the Abbey of Lorch, and you can very clearly see at the bottom that we have composite capitals. And again, these composite capitals, if you look carefully, they look all the same. Once you take a look at them, they look again slightly clumsier than a canonical composite, but the Acanthus leaf is still there. And you can see as well the carving of the Ionic capital. It's completely new, and even if it can look a bit clumsy, it corresponds with one of the oldest copies that we have from Vitruvius. Because we always say, oh, Vitruvius survived the Middle Ages without illustrations. And while it is true that the manuscript that Poggio da Bracciano found in San Gal didn't have any illustrations, there are some illustrations. Mostly the tower, mostly the trace of the city, of the ideal city by Vitruvius, the trace of the Rose of the Winds, but there is a French manuscript in the town of Celestat that has illustrations. They are very, very different illustrations to what you would expect from a Vitruvius, but it was someone who was making a good effort in understanding the text. Probably that someone didn't have illustrations, but because they don't look at all like a proper uh, canonical order, but they have illustration of bases, they have illustration of moldings. So there was someone who was relatively familiar with the classical language and was trying to illustrate Vitruvius again. So while we normally say that Fra Giocondo was the first one illustrating Vitruvius, the anonymous writer of the Celestat manuscript has that honor if we are talking in accurate terms. The Corinthian the Acanthus Leaf, and by extension the Corinthian capital, also played a role in Islamic architecture in Spain. All these capitals that you can see here, they are clearly Acanthus Leaf that have gone through a process of abstraction until they become standardized and what could be called the caliphal capital. And you can see very clearly that they inherited the technique from the Byzantines of all this trepanation. They took it to a different level, but then at some point they dropped the trepanation to become much more abstract. And why did this happen? That happened the moment they had to face the contract, if you want to say so, of providing capital for the last extension of the mosque. So in this case, the Acanthus Leaf becomes completely flattened and abstract. But this continues evolving through Spain, and we can see how the Acanthus Leaf start getting new leaves inside. It starts getting a totally different composition. So it has been like extracted from all its meaning, and a new meaning has been added onto it. So this is still a composite capital, but but you have something else inside each leaf. So it's quite interesting. In this case, it's again, it's even difficult to see the Acanthus leaf here, but here they are, like twirling around, creating its own spirals, and even showing some flowers. So this is 13th century, and then to finally end up in the so-called Alhambra or Nasrid capitals, which the Acanthus leaf has been highly stylized and converted into something abstract that doesn't look at all like an Acanthus leaf, but here it is, being there and creating you the Acanthus leaf. I'm rewinding back to Middle Ages to show you a selection of Acanthus leaf from Romanesque capitals, in which you can see very clearly the leaf with its flower totally stylized, but still being there. More ones, these are properly Corinthian capitals, still carved ex novo for this building. This is St. Gallen, the crypt of St. Gallen, and you can see, I mean, that it has a full architrave on top. The columns are a bit squat, but there was an effort of continuing the classical language in here. This is again in France. This is Santiago de Compostela, and you can see as well how the capitals stop being like a canonical thing to continue, and they become totally free repertoire for the craftsmen to do it. So this is what on one side we say, and some people call the Romanesque was the first classical revival, and they are not far from truth. The truth is that it's revival because it didn't have any canon, any code to follow. It quickly evolved and departed into something different that was inspired in classical, but not following the classical rules. And you can see with these capitals here and also these other ones here, you can see that they look. You see still the Acanthus leaf and the shafts twisted. You can see them there, but at the same time, it's too different. And also from after Romanesque, we come to a completely different period. And during Gothic times, the Acanthus leaf is still there. It's the only leaf that they were having as a reference. Is the only element they could use, and it continued through all the Gothic period to be part of Gothic architecture, creating a completely now different element. It would be the relationship of the Gothic capitals with the original Corinthian capital could be the same relationship between chickens and dinosaurs, but it is still there. So it's interesting to see how the elements prevailed. You can see again like very classicized capitals in Notre Dame that now they are very clearly seen with after all this whitening that they have done to the cathedral after the last restoration. But you can see very clearly the beautiful Corinthian capitals that the carvers did back then. While all the rest of the language is completely Gothic, you have glimpses of classicism in there. And you also have to consider that back for their mentality, especially the Middle Ages mentality, they didn't see any problem in doing that. For them, they were doing the same as the Romans. So they were not conscious about having broken an scheme or being anti-classical. For them, it was all part of the same thing. This thing of the romanticized Gothic as an anti-classical thing comes in the Romanticism. Comes when the Romantics want to see the highly spiritual values of Gothic in this architecture as opposed to the mundane values of classicism, which was at the same time a sort of bourgeois reaction against the excesses of the ancient regime. So the neoclassicism was the excess of the ancient regime. The Gothic was the purity of the and the spirituality of the old Europe that they were trying to restore. And of course, I mean, not only in terms of architectural elements, the Acanthus leaf conquered and invaded, as if it was an invasor plant, the whole medieval manuscripts. We have Acanthus leaf everywhere, beautifully surrounded in medieval manuscripts, and they are another testimony of the continuity of classical architecture through them. And then soon after, in 16th century, it would come back to the origins of the proper Acanthus leaf once they started restoring it since the Renaissance, and then it will come to us as a canonical element. So to here, a little bit of an overview of the evolution of the Acanthus leaf until the Middle Ages. As you know, and as I promised, I mean, I'm giving you the resources so that you know how to draw the Acanthus leaf, because people think that it's like a mystic element. It's very difficult to draw. It's very intense. You need to prepare. You need to do your prayers before drawing the Acanthus leaf. You need to do your golden ratio. No. The Acanthus leaf follows a very simple system to draw. And I'm bringing you the two books that I have found that they are easier to follow in terms of that. So the first one is a guide for drawing the acanthus by iPage. Yes, these books are in PDFs, and I will put them in the link of the group after the end of the class. So don't worry about that, because they are available at archive.org. So if you want to take note of the name, Guide for Drawing the Acanthus, and you type them on archive.org, you get this book. And it's a long book. It's a very long book. Starts telling you how to draw the acanthus, and then it starts explaining about the different variations of the acanthus leaf. So in that sense, it's very interesting because it covers all the evolution of the acanthus leaf up until the Middle Ages and then coming back. But the one that I find more useful to explain you how to draw, because it has very clear and its instruction, is this one, Architectural Drawing by Buster Bartfield, which I recommend to everyone to read and to have. You can buy. There are very cheap reprints available, and an original is not so expensive. So if you happen to find them in original, they are good. I mean, in reprint, I think they're around $10 to $20, and in originals you can find them for 60. Between £40, $60, €50, something like that. So it's not it's not difficult to be found. And here is a bit the secret of the acanthus leaf. You will have, I mean, because the problem of the acanthus leaf is that it needs to be drawn first in 2D. You need to train yourself in drawing it in 2D, and then you translate it into 3D. So that's where the complication resides. But once you get the structure of the leaf, it's easy to follow. So basically, you need to get the height of the leaf. You will get the width of the leaf. You need to trace you divide the width of the leaf in 3 parts. You connect the points, and then you divide this into 24 parts. And then I believe it was 6, 5, 4, 4, and 3. If you put markers at 6 and 511, and at 415, and at 419, and at 423, you get something like this. I don't, sorry, it was 27 parts. You get this, and from there onwards, you can start. If you see these circles here, there are these circles here, and then this helps you to trace the leaf, and then by gradual elaboration, you get the whole leaf. But also the leaves are sometimes a bit bended. So if you follow the same principle, you have your whole structure, then you bend the leaf, you can get the bended leaf. It's a matter of trying. This is very resumed, very summarized. In this other one, sorry, in page books of Acanthus, it's drawn, it's explained in a more detailed way. And that's basically the two resources that you should follow to draw the Acanthus leaf. And you have here, I mean, the distinction, the Greek leaves tend to be even more abstract than the Romans. And with here we finish this short introduction to the Acanthus leaf, because I think the purpose of this one is giving you the introduction, giving you the resources for the leaves. I think that I have here some examples how the Acanthus leaf will look like. So when you start drawing them by yourself, you will get something like this. And this was done during one of the classes that I do at the CPI. So this was done in around half an hour. Not the whole thing, not the whole drawing. The canvas itself is done in half an hour. So today is a bit shorter than others, but I mean probably we can have a more question times, anything that you may want. I mean next one will be about floor plans, and we will get a bit more of fun with the floor plans, and we will be also having a guest to talk about mukarnas. It is and it isn't, Herman, to draw them in perspective. The first one is difficult, but if you take a look at how to, and once you put them in front, the way you do them in perspective is you start putting them back in the plane, and you do a little bit of changes in plane in geometry. It's not difficult at all. And the moment you draw a couple of them, you are done. It just requires practice. But it's super easy to draw. And once you start, I mean, it's your brain keeps quickly the process, and it starts being by itself very, very quick. So take a look, especially, I mean, those. Yes, you can, Sohaib. I mean, I think that you are our next guest for next week, for next 2 weeks.
Hello, Professor, and everybody. I'm very happy to see you again with some more information about traditional architecture, especially about the council leaves. I just want to add something about the council leaves, that it's more to be like a combination of the abstract and the natural plant flowers,
Uh-huh.
floral patterns, basically. So in Islamic architecture, we used to call it the Rumi, the abstract part, which we call the council leaf, because it is a very abstract form of plant floral pattern, which is only there for the creating the balance between the nature and the abstract. It is just similar to that concept that there is something which a human mind can perceive, and there is something which is beyond the imagination or even the thinking of a human being, which is called the divine source or divine, divine ray. So that the illumination in that way, the Rumi, the council leaf basically represent that part of the philosophy. So that's something I would really want to add regarding this whole, you know, your presentation, which was again a very important perspective regarding to Islamic architecture and other traditional architecture of Southern Asian and Asian part of the globe. So that's the point. But I hope that would be a good point for you people.
Thank you for pointing that out. I think you have pointed out to something very interesting, which is why the Acanthus leaf is an abstraction. Why did we go into abstraction? Because this abstraction doesn't only happen in Islamic architecture; it happened before Islamic architecture. It happened because of a way of perceiving the world, the Neoplatonic and the Platonic way of perceiving the world, in which what we see is we see things, but what we perceive is the idea of a thing. So
Yes,
the leaf is not the real acanthus. We're representing the
yeah,
idea of acanthus. That's why, and by abstracting all these elements, sometimes they might look stylized, they might look abstract, they might look not realistic, because the important thing of representing here is the idea, the connection with
yeah,
with divinity and the divine object that in which reality lies on. So
yeah,
it's a very Platonic way and Neoplatonic of perceiving the of perceiving reality that then would be adopted
yeah,
by Islam as a direct contact with Neoplatonic, because it matched very well the banning of
yeah,
human figures and nature. Then if you don't represent nature as it is, you represent the idea of nature,
yeah.
you're perfect.
Exactly,
You're representing perfection.
exactly,
So it's
exactly. That is something, Professor. I really want to add more about that. That is something which is very important to understand regarding traditional architecture. It's just not only about the abstract icons and elements or the domes and structures like thing. It is basically the metaphorical. In arts, why a person do arts to represent his emotions and express the way he really think about the world is because the feelings and emotions are something which can be represent, which cannot be possibly be represented in a physical way. So, what an artist and architect do, he try to, metaphorically present them to some mean of some medium. So basically, this all the console leaves and the Bronchian columns and the wall structures always, depict the nature in design and create the harmony due to which a human always have a connection with us with the environment around him. So that is very important part of the traditional architecture, which we usually skip by only considering traditional architecture as just a source of aesthetic and appealing and sight-viewing thing. So basically, it's more to be like connected to the divine power. It can be anything. It can be Ram, Om, Allah, Jesus. It's all connected to us something very special, which we always left behind in our education system, all because of this advancement, technology, and science. We always are forced to keep on learning new things and technology, not only for to be something, actually to have something, which is again change the motto of a human from being something to be, or going towards to have something. So it is a very thin line between all these two factors. So it is very important to study, not only to study traditional architecture on the basis of the aesthetic values, but we should try to learn traditional architecture in the basis of understanding the true meaning, the true reality behind these abstract forms, because these forms are really trying to connect us with the nature, with the true spirit, which we usually just left behind, all because of just considering the, oh, that's beautiful, the crowning columns, that is, how beautiful its details are. So that's very important. And what I learned from your these sessions, I always have a connection regarding what you taught us and what I see in surroundings. So it's very useful. And thank you, Professor.
you're welcoming, and you are pointing a very, very important thing that we normally forget to talk about when we talk about classical architecture, which is the symbolic dimension of classical architecture. We forget about it because architects, we are not trained in philosophy, we are not trained in theology, we are just trained in drafting and building. And it comes from from a period in time in which architects will be also trained in philosophy. It will be also expected to know theology, philosophy, and many other things. And we forget about that when we talk about all this beautiful architecture. We forget that it has also a dimensional, symbolic dimension. With Acanthus Leaf, with the Corinthian capital specifically representing femininity and youth, the Ionic representing intellectuality, the Doric representing masculinity and boldness. We forget sometimes about that. And when you bring it back to the discourse, people get a, oh, actually, that makes sense. So it is very important to keep that, because I mean, one guest that we will have very soon as well is going to also to be talking about Or if you want, I recommend, I will put you the link to his article in the Revista Baluarte, which is the book, the magazine by the Instituto Brasileiro de Arquitectura Tradicional, where he talks about traditional architecture and the different uh, dimensions of traditional architecture, which you can summarize in three. You have the symbolic dimension, which is, let's say, the traditional, the properly traditional one. You have the scientific dimension, which is the one that is being unbuilt now, which is like, let's say, like the truth behind tradition. And why we do things in a certain way, it's because of the neuroscience that is also justifying the that why that architecture is beautiful and why we perceive it as beautiful. And there is finally, and last but not least, the nostalgic interpretation. And this nostalgic interpretation starts with Edmund Burke, the Sublime, Roger Scruton, etc., which is also a big component on the new traditional movement he's writing. So it has to be included on that. So on the three of them, normally we have like a balance on the three of them. Some people will lean more to a symbolic um, approach because they come from the nostalgia, or because they want to give like more meaning to the more scientific approach of the. Oh, thank you very much, Nicole. So there, Nicole has put very kindly the article of the magazine where you can read. His name is Alex Keys, and the article is called "What is Classical? What is Traditional Architecture?" I also wrote one there, "What is Classical Architecture?" which is a summary of the class we had a month ago. So please feel free also to read it. The magazine is very good, so I recommend you to read that magazine together as well with the Classic Planning Herald. There are two very good magazines about classical architecture nowadays, which I recommend you to read. And there are more. There are a lot of them, but obviously the ones I'm going to promote are those two ones, which are the ones I work closely. But you have the Archives of New Traditional Architecture by Notre Dame, which is also very good. You have the Culturas Constructivas, which is much more academic and scientific, in the sense that they go through the peer review system, and they are very, especially very good if you want to search about a specific topic. And maybe you find someone, a scholar, who has talked about it in a very academic way. So it's very important to get that as well. Christian, Vitruvius said architects should know philosophy at the surface level. For us, would mean knowing ancient philosophy. I would say that ancient philosophy needs to be known. At least you need to have a basic or a intermediate knowledge of Plato and Aristotle, but also Thomism. Thomism and Scholastic is very important to understand the basis in which classical architecture thrives. Then we could enter into rationalism and empiricism and Marxism, Kantism, what's the name of Nietzsche, nihilism, existentialism, etc. They are all, but they are after. So the core is classical philosophy applied to Aristotle in its most, and then how that is filtered and reinterpreted through Thomism and Scholastic. Even if you don't agree with it, and if you are not Catholic, it is necessary to understand Thomist philosophy and Scholastic to get into the true meaning, the symbolic component of classical architecture, which is also the component that they had in mind when they were building this architecture. Even if nowadays we have all the values of the systems, we need to understand why architecture was done the way it was perceived and conceived. We cannot sing of presentism in this case. So philosophy is very important. It's I would say that, yeah, it's the world of ideas. It's very important to understand this architecture. Correct. The different ism should be studied after. You know that. I mean, obviously, because they have an impact in our life, they have an impact in our philosophy, they have an impact in our beliefs. That's out of question. But if we're talking about architecture, uh, whether you follow or not, Marxism doesn't have anything to say on classical architecture, for example. So that's the thing. Whether you follow Marx theories or not, whether you follow Kant, they don't. Kant and Burke maybe for the sort of nostalgic approach, the subliminal approach, which also brings a little bit of the neuroscientific approach, maybe those. But it's more the world of ideas, and you need to understand that that dichotomy between the world of the real world, as Aristotle would say, and the world of ideas, as Plato would define it, is the way you need to understand this architecture, because otherwise you don't understand why Callimachus went from a basket surrounded by wheat into the Corinthian capital. You don't understand why quirky ladies' hairstyle became the Ionic capital. If you don't get the symbolic abstract approach to it, you cannot get into there. So it is important to have that into consideration. So as usual, I like to make a reminder to everyone, especially those who are seeing us as a recording, that about the beauty and ugliness in architecture, that will be from the 2nd to the 4th of May in Oslo. A lot of people will be talking. I mean, my colleague Dr. Burasami from the Classic Planning Institute will be having 2 lectures, plus we will be doing a tracing exercise in architectural and ornament there. So you're invited to come if you want. And also the summer schools. I mean, those of you who are usuals, I should start adding more, but the Bruges, in which I will be participating actively, the Kongs, which is apparently going to be very, very beautiful. So I recommend you to go to Kongs, which is going to be an unforgettable experience. Bruges will be nice as well. Of course, I mean, if you are in Mexico, the Inbound Mexico School, there is, I know that that Fernando is organizing something. So Fernando, please feel free to talk about your summer school if you want. I will include it in the next issue as well to talk about it. But please, if you want to give us a premiere, feel free to talk about it.
Thank you, Paulo. Yes, we'll be focusing on northern Mexican architecture and ornament. So we'll be doing some designs, mostly from already built historic buildings, and we'll be working on a molding. And we'll be collaborating with Inbound Mexico and some other architects. So
Good.
more information coming soon.
Good. I mean, but yeah, so you can see that there is a lot of initiatives around, and I mean, and thank you for talking about it, Fernando, because obviously this is also for the people who will be listening us on the recording, so that they know that there is also another one on top of the ones I mentioned here. And as I always say, check your local chapter of Inbound, because I think that this year there are 3 of them in the United States for the American audience. We have the usual one in Cambridge here in UK. You will have one in Norway, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium. They want to do one in France. There will be one in Spain this year in the south, in the beautiful city of Ronda, and much more to come. I think that you have the Romanian one. Especially if you want a hard-working, hands-on school, you should go to the Romania Summer School, which is going to be amazing, especially if you want to learn how to build and build the stuff with your own hands. So, but be prepared for hard work. But yeah, mensana in corpore sano. So a marginal digression to first part of Sims offer only classical architecture, Windows column, had a few female concepts, so I know what I am saying. You mean the Sims like the game? But this was the very, very original ones from 25 years ago. Am I right? Because I remember I think that the Sims were using the aspirational of the American house, which is now called what we call nowadays the Mac Mansion. The Sims with the Sims were aspirational Mac Mansions. So that's what we all were being taught by by the Sims, which was otherwise quite fun, etc. But yeah, they were playing this sort of classical architecture because they were relying on the sort of, will you say that, Pablo? They were relying on the spiritual power of classical architecture for the American middle and higher classes, which was still very much the 1980s and 1990s. That was the architecture they were promoting after having had a sort of hangover from supermodernist architecture in the 60s and 70s. Then they wanted to come back a little bit to the sort of post-colonial and New England architecture, etc., as part of the sort of New Deal, new politics from that time, being associated more with more conservative values. So that's a bit what the Sims, what the Sims were promoting through architecture. Now, if you want to make a wider political lecture, I leave that to other. There was recently an article, I read it. They were comparing The Sims with The Matrix. You may remember Matrix, the movie. So they were comparing it a little bit with the movie, in the sense that you know that in the universe of Matrix, they they did a first Matrix that was perfect, and people were not happy in the perfect Matrix, so they replicated a society with all these defects. So the Sims is like the perfect Matrix in that sense, or they needed to turn it into a sort of perfect Matrix, because they apparently the very very prototype version, it was super easy that your dummy would die of the most, apparently on the most stupid way. So you could put your dummy to cook, and it had a 99% of possibilities of being buried, of being burnt, dying by burns, or if you were not feeding, it would end choked, things like that. So that's why they lowered down a little bit to make it. And for example, it was if you were not checking them shower, they were stinky after 5 seconds. So things like that. We don't know how the first Matrix was, but that's the. I don't know if it was a classical. It was probably. I would say that it was. Like I would say that, taking it to my side, I would say that the first Matrix wasn't classical. The first Matrix would have been a ultra modernist technological utopia. If it had been classical, people would have been happy on it. That's why that would be my intake and my punch towards classical, because I would say that's why it failed. It was too modern. So I mean, I know many of you already know, but we're starting to have opened applications for our Classic Planning Academy. And as you know, these classes, this Salon of Classical Architecture, give you the resources, and then I leave you on your own to do it. If you want to learn, if you want me to step in and teach you how to draw everything, we have a longer course on it for people who want to come, and that's what we would like you to do. So this is an ample sales pitch for you, and also to show you what you can get from us for free, so that you can see the value of what you will be getting if you get the full course. And we're divided into 2 years. I mean, right now we're doing the 4th edition of our first year. In October, we're starting the 5th edition of our first year. So we normally do a year two every 2 years one, so that we get the momentum for it. I have more questions here. I'm surprised that the method for the Acanthus leaf is so detailed. I mostly see people drawing them freely. Well, you have some people draw them freely because you know how to do it. I mean, once you know how to draw it, the process won't seem. I mean, it won't seem so complicated, so detailed. It is detailed, but once you know how to do it, it just comes. It's you will realize that it's easier than it looks, and yeah, no, and obviously you have the people who just draw it by whatever they like. And for example, all the medieval Acanthus leaves, all this was drawn freely. All this was out of question. All this was drawn freehand. All the medieval one were done freehand. Of course, I mean the only one that was following this system was the properly classical Acanthus Leaf. And take a look at this one at Page. Page is giving you the full the full resource on how to do the step by step, because it also explains you how to draw the small divisions. But even doing this, I mean, it just practice it. After doing 10, you can even do them manually. You do once you do 10 or 20, you stop doing these divisions here. You just know what the circles are and then how they evolve. So it's not it's that's why you are able to draw them freely, because once it is in your brain, it's a process that boom, 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 boom. It's the same thing as the classical orders. Once you know how to draw them, you get them. And then that's why it doesn't matter. That's why sometimes I sketch, and when I do a capital, especially a Doric capital, I do two parallel lines, period. Why? Because you don't need more to understand that, especially in a sketch. I am not doing a work of art trying to win the Prix of Rome, because then obviously we will all go to CAD. I would say that, and even if you do it in CAD, it takes time the first time, but then later on it doesn't take much time to draw the Acanthus leaf. What you need to get is just once you get all the projections, it's super easy. Yeah, check them. I mean, both of them. I will put the books in the WhatsApp group, and also they will be put for those of you watching the videos. It will be in the video description, the links to the books, so you will get them there as well. And yeah, this is the wonderful world of the Acanthus leaf, and how you can learn more from it. More questions? More comments? Yes, let me check. I'm going to put, where is we have somewhere the link to the WhatsApp group. Let me just da, 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 da. Yeah. I know. Okay, I was writing it to group. Okay, that's the link to join the group, I hope. Yes, so that's what you can join, and then yeah, then we can talk through that. The group is divided into several subsections, meaning that we have an inspiration, we have off topic, we have announcement, and we have the library and the inspiration section. So, and projects. So if depending on what you want to show or discuss, you enter into one or another. I mean, normally the one for events is just restricted to announce when we're having our sessions or when one of our colleagues are having their sessions. And the off topic is more for general discussion. Inspiration is more if you have seen something that you like and you want to share it with everyone. And project is for things that you're working on. But actually, it's a library. We will only be putting links to books. So, for example, if you enter into off topic asking for information about the book, what we will tell you is we have placed the answer in the section of the library so that everyone can see the books in retrospective. So, I mean, I know that some of you were working on participating on the competition for Belfast. Has the winner been announced or not yet?
I think not yet.
Okay, what about the Belgian one? Because I remember they are about to announce the probably.
The Belgium, I think it's today.
Yeah, they will call the winners today, so we'll see who has won those wonderful competition. The quality has been good, and unfortunately, some very good drawings didn't get enough likes to qualify. It's a shame, but that's how social media works. No, it's like the if you vote with your like, you get that.
But
But yeah,
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 they had many entries, so it was quite good, like 40, I think, and
yes.
quite a variety.
Yeah, no, it was, some of them were very good, some of them were good, and some of them were okay. Everyone is it has the right to participate.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
true.
you cannot deny the entrance to all of them, and no, it's good. It's good that there is a lot of people working and participating on all these initiatives, and the whole purpose of doing all this, the Salon, La Table Ronde, etc., is more to spread it to everyone, because it is very important that the movement spreads to people who are not architects and people who want to know more about
Mhm.
architecture. Obviously, we architects, we are part of the problem, as well as we're part of the solution. But it is important that let's call it lay people take part on this and are told that it is possible to get something different from it.
Mhm.
So that's quite important as well. So any comment? I mean, we'll see also who is the winner in the Belfast one. All the competitions were very interesting. But I won't say which was my favorite until the winner is announced. Not because I am involved, because it's a popular jury. But obviously I don't want to. I probably next week when it is announced, you can ask me which was your favorite, and then we'll say, yeah, it was this one.
Mhm.
Well, this has been a bit of a short one. Next week will In 2 weeks time, the 15th of March, it will be longer, because we will be having our lecture about plants. So Haib will come and talk about Mukarnas and Islamic architecture in Pakistan, which I am very much looking forward to it, because he's doing very interesting stuff, and I asked him if he would want to share it with everyone coming here. So we will try to bring also more people, so that they can see what he does, which I think is very interesting. And as well, also remind all of you, even if it isn't here, I should put in the group as well, that we have free classes at the Classic Planning Institute about Islamic architecture, classical architecture, neuroscience, and classic planning. And I would dare you to come to the Islamic ones, not because it's me the one who's teaching them, it's because I'm teaching them in May. So after 2 years, I'm stopping that class, because I just want to because every month doing the same chat. I mean, some people love. I know a lot of people love it, but I am starting to get a little bit tired of doing the same. And I'm going to do a different. I'm going to do a different one. Topic is still to be confirmed, but there will be, as usual, free classes. And then you are very welcome to come. It will be probably about classic planning cities, and the same way that you have learn how to draw classical architecture, learn how to design beautiful cities like Paris, Rome, or Barcelona. So that's a bit the topic and the announcements. Any more questions, gentlemen and ladies?
I have a question about the CPI,
Yes.
the course, because I was thinking of applying next year, and I was thinking I read the Q&A to see how it's possible to how do you say it, conciliate someone working like full time and the course.
Yeah.
I think I read something, but I don't quite remember well, and
Yes.
I
Basically,
like to ask you for your experience, from your experience, how people can or your students can like do
most,
things at the same time.
most of our students are people who work, who have
Mm-hmm.
full-time jobs, and depending on the time zone in where they are, they might have to do slight adjustments to the workload to fit the classes. And when we
Mm-hmm.
started in 2021, it was very easy because everyone was working from home.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
that was true. So it was very easy. Now I think that for people like you who are in Portugal, for people who are in Portugal, anywhere in Europe, or anywhere from I would say from Portugal and Ireland to the east is easy because the courses start at 5 o'clock GMT on Thursdays.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's easy because for all that people in that part of the world, you just do it after your working hours. If you are on the other side, it can be a bit more complicated. I think it works. We have found that, funnily enough, it is a bit complicated for people in the east coast of the United States because it starts at 12 and finishes at 5. That is relatively easy for people in the west coast because it starts at 9 and finishes at 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
for people in California and in Mexico, it's relatively good because it's like it doesn't break your day into two parts. While for other people, it's a bit more difficult. So it's a matter of, because what I know is that people ask for arrangements at work. I have an arrangement myself at work. No, I mean on to finish early on Thursday so that they can teach. So that's the that's the thing. So in your case, I think it should be okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me no, I finish my shift at 11 o'clock every day, so then it might not be the case. But obviously, you need to. What I try to do is that the classes are 5 hours each week, and normally you should be able to draw everything in a single class. For example, this drawing that you see here, that was done in a single 6-hour class. I mean, we had to extend it a little bit more if you wanted to include
Mm-hmm.
the Acanthus Leaf and the whole Corinthian capital, but this whole piece of paper is done in 5 hours.
Okay, seems reasonable.
So
Actually.
what I mean is that you don't need to spend more time after work doing this. Then we
Okay.
will cover exercises, and therefore the exercises you might have to spend a little bit of time to refine them, etc. Because this is something, it's almost like a dictation. No? I tell you what to do, but in the exercises you need to figure out what to do. And inspiration, as you very well know, can be very, very sneaky in the sense that
Yeah,
you
of
spend
course.
3 days unable to do anything, and then in 2 hours do all the work you haven't been able to do in 3 days. And that's because you get the idea then. So that, because that is a bit out of control, it might require, for the second part of the course, might require a little bit of extra time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I mean, we have people who they manage to do this in one row. Other people, they need to watch the recording because all the classes are recorded and put to take a look later. So people will come and say, okay, I had to step in, or I didn't get very well how to draw the acanthus, and then you have the recording to help you, where you will see step by step how it was drawn. Same thing with, I mean, this is the Corinthian, but same with the Ionic. Oh, I didn't know how to draw the volute. I mean, the volute, we draw it in big, in a big A3, so that you know all the process of how to do the full turn. And then if not, I mean, you call me and then we do it. We do it again. But the recordings will be there, which will be a recording of myself doing the exercise, which will be basically that view doing the exercise. That's what you will get. And normally it can be conciled. I think it depends also on the amount of personal compromises that you have. If they're on, the classes are on Thursdays, and we are not planning on changing it at all, because you might think, oh, Thursdays. Well, what a strange, no? We could do it on a Sunday, we could do it on a Saturday, we could do on a Friday. But ironically enough, I mean, when we finish every course and we ask people, they end up because I tell them, would you perhaps prefer to have it on a Friday? Everyone says no. Why?
Yeah.
Because nowadays there are people who A, don't work on Fridays. B, the Fridays is their focus day, which means that it's a day in which they are focusing on their own part of work that they have to do, no meetings, no anything. So it's a very much of a hermit day, where they catch up with the week, and that's basically why they didn't want to. And then Saturdays and Sundays they say no. Saturday is for family, or Saturday and weekend is for the family, and then Sundays people work quite against because they go to church, etc. Saturdays, same reason, and Fridays as well. It was a bit of a, when we have students from the Middle East, they were a bit reluctant on having it on Friday as well.
Mhm,
Saturday
mhm.
for the Israelis, which we normally have one or two Israelis. So we ended up realizing that Thursday is the best day, even if at the beginning it sounds to you that not. It ends up being the first day, and they say, oh, actually, it's good because then you do the class on Thursday, and then you have the whole weekend to refine
Mhm.
anything you do. If you have the class on Sunday, you don't have time to recharge.
Okay, seems fine.
But normally,
Yeah, no,
it's
mhm.
it, it should be okay for people. Obviously, you come and tell me, no, I have triplets,
Yeah.
and then they are very noisy and we don't sleep, and we have triplets and 5 dogs and 7 cats. Then not for you. Maybe you have bigger problems to bigger issues to tackle, or things like that. So or you are in between jobs, or just started a new job and then you cannot be so flexible. So in those circumstances, need to be considered as well. Normally, everyone is capable of doing it, and obviously, I mean, if they tell you no, no is a no from your boss. So we don't want anyone to lose their job because of our courses. So that's what we normally we offer flexibility, but you need to ensure that you have that 5 hours per week they are booked with us, because it has to be doing this through a recording. It's if you watch the record, because I have from students, I have students who are boom capable of doing it if they watch the class live and then get some refinement by watching the recording. And if the student doesn't come to the class and then wants to do the video, the order through the recording, it takes them twice the time.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's just because when you do it live, you follow a process. When you're doing the recording, your perception is different.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah.
And then when you do it live, if you have a question, it comes to you and I explain in the recording. If you're watching from the recording and you have a question, you don't have any way of contacting me.
Mhm. Mhm.
The first thing I will tell you is watch the full recording, and then I contact you, sit down with you, and do anything. But I want you to watch the full recording to understand it. And in a 99, in a, not 99, 90% of the cases, you're capable of doing it. You will have questions, of course, and those questions are always answered of class. So that's a bit the flexibility that we offer. So this is not like a pack. This is not like a DVD that you buy.
Mhm.
Thank you very much. Buy. No, it's a live course. I mean, because we have other students who are telling us, "Oh, I want to do it, but I cannot come to the classes." I said, "Well, then how do you want to do it?" No, unfortunately, we're not going to admit you if you cannot come to the classes. So
Mhm.
that's a bit the thing, and that's especially complicated for people who are in Australia. Uh, in India is okayish. Well, it's not good, but it's still not bad. Middle East is okay. It's a bit late, but people in the Middle East, they love staying till late, so that's not a problem. At least whenever we have had people from the Middle East, it was not a problem. At all, it's a bit like us Mediterraneans, though. It's like,
Yeah,
uh,
of course.
yeah, we can finish the course at 1 o'clock in the morning. I will be perfect. Now, if you tell me that the course starts at 7, I will tell you no, thank you very much, bye. So that's a bit bad. I think that India, Australia, you have to wake up very early. I think it's like
Mhm.
6 o'clock in the morning. So we have at Australians, and obviously I call them our heroes. Especially when it's good when we start the course in autumn, because then it's summer for them, so it's perfect. But
Ah,
when we
yeah.
the other way around, it's harsh
Mhm.
because but by the time we finish, you see them in blankets or in the or shivering because it's super. It can be cold in Australia as well.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but that's the thing. I mean, you will be very, very welcome, and I will be very happy to have you in the next year. We are starting very likely first half of October.
Mhm.
Date to be confirmed, but it will be early October because this year we started late November and we're going to finish mid-July, probably end of July, and that starts overlapping with the summer schools. And I don't want to overlap
Mhm.
with the summer schools because we have people who go to the summer schools, and then it's difficult. So I want to push and start early October so that we finish in late June.
Okay, thank you very much. I will study the case.
So just send the application, and you will have an interview with Dr. Burres, because you already had the interview with me.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of time, so I know you very well, and it will be almost like a formality. More
Okay,
questions?
thank you.
Could you please mention again info about the urban design session you mentioned? Okay, so these are coming in by myself. The ones I'm going to start doing start in May, second half of May, and are going to be about classic planning and about how cities work and design. I think that you have now on Eventbrite, you have another one which is called Classic Planning and Neuroscience by Dr. Buras. So those ones, I welcome you to come, and he's going to talk about totally different topic that I'm going to talk. I mean, we are together in this enterprise, but each of us have provide a different point of view so that it's not repeating each other. So these ones are the minds are going to be focused on studying what works in traditional cities, and I'm still pondering which cities I want to mention, because it has to be a 1 hour free class like the ones we do here at the Salon. And it will be talking, but for sure I will be talking about Paris, Barcelona, and Vienna, which are like the three classical examples of good 19th century urbanism. Paris as the model of internal urban reformation, Barcelona as the case for infinite urban extension, and Vienna as something in between. And all the other models more or less correspond to much or to lesser or bigger level to either Paris or to Barcelona. So there are models like Barcelona before Barcelona. There are interventions like Paris before Haussmann. So it's not that Haussmann invented that type of urbanism, neither Cerdà invented the grid, but they both took it to a level of perfection. And then Vienna is an intermediate case. I mean, I could see New York, for example, is an example of a grid, and it's like the grid outside the old New Amsterdam. That's basically what it did. Rome had interventions similar to Haussmann, and at the end of 16th century with Sixtus V. So there is is not, but Haussmann took it to a different level. So that's why I'm wondering if for a small 3 hour, for a small 1 hour class would be enough. 15-minute Paris, 15-minute Barcelona, 15-minute Vienna, introduction and conclusion. So it will be something like that. At the classic planning, we do a longer one, a 5 hour one, which covers the whole history of urbanism. I call it from Göbekli Tepe to Poundbury, 12,000 years in 5 hours. So, and then we touch. It's like very quick, but we touch everything. And there, for example, I touch a little bit Tenochtitlan and the Chinampas, etc., and the law of Indies. But that is like a super long class. And it's still, you leave a lot of things outside. There is one book by Fernando Chueca. History of Urbanism or Historia del Urbanismo. That's very good for getting an overall view of the story of urbanism. That's quite good. Or the Leonardo Benevolo, A History of Modern Urbanism, is also very good, but up to the first half of the book, because then he starts. Leonardo Benevolo is a modernist, but who gives its fair share to classicism and tradition, and puts everything in its context. It's not like this sort of vertical stories of architecture where everything was done for modernism. No, you are in 15th century, and Brunelleschi is already thinking in terms of Le Corbusier when he's solving the Duomo di Florencia, or Palladio is already thinking in the Villa Stein and all the villas that in that big piece of confusion called the Mathematics of the Ideal Villa. Suggest, or or this other one. Oh, sorry, Chueca Goitia. I wrote Chueca Gomita. Sorry, apologies for the typo. God, how did that happen? Yes, damn translated, because the computer operates in English. Half of the Spanish names they translated in a different way. Chueca Gomita, that's new. So it's like you all know Nico Salingaros. You know Nico Salingaros, no? The first time I spoke with him, I called him Mr. Stalingrados. Years ago, it was like 20 years ago, I wrote him an email asking what he was doing, etc., because he was super excited. And in all my excitement, I didn't check the email. I wrote him, "There, Mr. Stalingrados." He was very kind to answer me back and saying, "Yes, but please bear in mind my name is Stalingrados, not Stalingrados." Soviet, the anthem of the Soviet Union, imagine. So those are funny stories that happen. No, I mean, I think that. So, and more books about urbanism. Of course, I have to recommend The Art of Classic Planning. That's your book. So if you want to know more, The Art of Classic Planning is the book you need to read. Of course, I am from the CPI. That's our I normally say that we have 3 books that I would say 4 books. We have 4 books that are the basis of what we do there. One is The Art of Classic Planning. The other one is the American Vignola. So those are the 2 strong pillars. And then together with the American Vignola comes the Rules of Drawings from Gibbs, because it contains basically all the little elements of design that you need to know and that are covered in the American Vignola, and the Classical Language of Architecture by John Summerson. Have all of you read that one, the Classical Language of Architecture? Yes, no? If you haven't, I want you to read it for next week. It's a very short book. Very short book. Very big characters to read, a lot of photographs. So you read it in a weekend. If you haven't read it, please read it. I'm not promoting Thames. This one is Dover? No. Thames and Hudson is not promoting this this post, but please read The Classical Language of Architecture by John Summerson. I think that is how it's doing it. I'm going to write it here. It's a very beautiful book to understand classical architecture, and it's the first book that everyone wanted to enter into this world should read, because you will get a very beautiful understanding, a very basic understanding of it. And why this book and not any other? Because there are thousands of books called classical architecture. Dimitri Porphyrios, for example, has one which is very good, but you need to know a little bit of classical architecture to enter into Dimitri's classical. But the nice thing of this book, this is actually the first edition of the Classical Language of Architecture. You see, it's much thinner than the one I showed you. And this book was initially came after a radio interview to John Summerson. So this was in the late 60s. So everyone was so impressed with the radio talk that they wrote to the BBC. Imagine, in the 60s, they wrote to the BBC to bring him back again. So they invited him, and then they repeated the same talk. And then people wrote again, "Oh yeah, this is a very beautiful talk, but we don't know what he's talking about." Because obviously now I tell you, go and check the Radcliffe camera in Oxford, and the first thing all of you do is just check in Google Radcliffe camera. Bingo, you all know what I'm talking about. In the late 60s, it was very difficult, because even if you had a book, a physical book of architecture, you needed to find that. It was taking much more time. So he wrote a small leaflet, which is this one, which what people could buy in advance before he gave the radio talk. So it's a perfect introduction to classical architecture, Western classical. It barely covers even Eastern classical architecture, and by Eastern I mean like all Levant and Egypt, Turkey, Greece. It barely covers a little bit, talking about the origin. So it's mostly Western classical with a heavy input on England, because Jomerson was English. But that doesn't mean that is not a bad book. That means, I mean, it's an introduction and obviously works very well for the English speaking. Once you start going from the English speaking worlds, you find, or eventually you read it, and then you keep researching about your own architecture, and then you realize that things that Somerson is talking about can be also applicable to your own architecture. No, imagine you are in Lisbon, and you read Somerson, and then eventually say, oh, actually, this building for the Baixa Pombalina, they start reminding me to what Summerson was saying. Or you are in Mexico City, or you are in Osaka, you will say, oh, actually, this monastery reminds me to what he was talking about, how the classical ideas were extrapolated into Christian, etc., etc. I think I have seen that one. That's good as well. Yeah. I mean, I think that the good thing of Summerson is that it's very short. So it's an introduction. It's a book to read. It's not a book to, let's say that, well, the American Vignola is a book that you normally have in your, or I have in my desk. Well, I don't have the American Vignola. I have Vignola. I have in my desk a copy of Vignola. Whenever I need to remember something, I just jump onto it and check it. But you will never be able to use John Summerson on a day-to-day basis. It's basically, once you read it, you reread it, and that's all. So it's a book to read and to have as a reference book, not as a working copy in your desk. No, I mean, in my desk I have the grammar of the handbook of ornament. I know I have the American Vignola. I have the American Vignola. I have Vignola. I have Chetham's the classical laws of architecture. I have Normand's parallel. I have the book of style, which is very good for the for English period houses. And then I have, what's the other one? I have a catalog of chimneys, of fireplaces by Chesney, which is very good, from the 70s, because it gives you the measured drawings of all the fireplaces. So easy to draw if you want to draw a new bespoke fireplace and you don't want to go for the horrible new models. So you can go, it's Chesney's. They're very good. So I'm just being mean with them. The Chesney's is very good for fireplaces. So if you want to have a good quality fireplace, go to Chesney's. And Chesney's is not promoting this, so it's just me telling you that they are good. So Chesney's is quite good. So I have that, and then I have 3 books on Islamic architecture, the history of Qatari architecture, because I work a lot in Qatar, the decorative arts in Arabia, and discovering Arabian Art Deco and the Ottoman architecture. So the Arabian Art Deco is very fun. It's very fun book, because you realize that the amazing things that they were doing in the Middle East in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, super crazy stuff. And then they became modern, but they didn't care. They wanted to still to have their own stuff. So it's very fun. It's very fun. The Middle East in the 40s and 50s is very fun architecture. Yes, please, Sohaib, whatever you want, please feel free to say something about identity. It's very important.
Yeah. First of all, I attended the winter school last year in Doha. I went there and was attending the session with the Professor Abdul Wahid al-Waki.
Yeah.
But he tells a very interesting story while in his session, that when in the later 500 to 600 years later, when most of us will be underground and our buildings will be underground. So what we say, archaeologists will go and find out what actually the people, what is actually behind this land, beneath this land, sorry, what is actually laying down in this land. So when you dig it down, he founded some glass, metal, sheets, and plastic. And when he dig at a far distance, he will find the same material. So at that point, they will say that, oh, we are able to identify who they are and what they are and what they are doing there and what actually their identity is. So in the later years, we're definitely gonna lose the regional identity which we create through the architecture. So that is something which we really need to consider regarding architecture, which is a very sensitive thing towards the future, because if you don't have the identity, you cannot characterize yourself in among the people. So identity is something which is again a cluster of people, which is very important to for have a better communication and better learning. So that is very important. Yeah, and one thing very important thing I would like to add, you mentioned the books regarding Islamic architecture, of the Arab lands. I would like to mention the book, the Jaipur Portfolio. Jaipur.
Oh, yeah, that's very
Yeah,
good. That's very, very
yeah,
good.
yeah.
The paper
It
portfolio
is
is very
something which,
good.
yeah, it's by General Jacob. So I just found out that almost like
Yeah,
4 to 5 portfolios on the internet.
it's amazing. It's
Yeah,
very good to for all the Indian and Pakistani architecture. It's amazingly good. Because there is nothing like that. So
yeah.
it's that, and there is nothing like the Jaipur portfolio. So it's very, very interesting. I have one here. The old where I mean, oh, I don't have it anymore. Yeah,
It's actually 12 chapters basically, but I
it's
have
not the
fortunately I have
Jaipur.
12 chapters, sorry, 6 chapters in PDF way. Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
It's
I don't think
I just learned a lot of things from here. The
yeah,
chatris, the plinths,
please, everyone, if
detail,
you
and
want to know
everything.
more about architecture in that area, download from archive.org the Jaipur portfolio. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's really, really amazing.
I will definitely share the links in the if I'm able to give you the
This other one,
a
Elements of
presentation on Muqarnas and Islamic architecture,
yes,
because
please.
portfolio is the only source of true spirit and true learning the drawings, especially the
Yeah, yeah,
drawing
yeah, yeah.
of traditional
Bring
architecture in South Asia, especially in subcontinent where India and
yeah,
Pakistan are
yeah,
all
yeah, yeah.
together connected.
It's very, very good, and it's basically the only source that we
Yeah,
have of a good collection of measured drawings of South Asian architecture. It's basically the only one. So it's very, very, very good to
I will
don't.
definitely also share the drawings of some masters of the craftsmen
Yes,
in
please.
the later. I have some, from my master with as I am working with Musa Kamil Khan Mumtaz. So I have the privilege to see such documents, which is very, on a very small scale and which is very the direct drawings of the masters of that time. So I will definitely
That's
ask
very
them to give me some samples and I can share with you people.
yeah. That will be great because I think that when compared to classical architecture, Islamic architecture doesn't have a strong um, empirical, no, sorry, a strong scientific theoretical body. We don't, Islamic architecture doesn't have a Vitruvius. It has an empirical tradition. And what I mean with empirical tradition is a tradition that you learn through your masters. But
Yeah,
your master,
exactly. That's a beautiful thing.
that's it. So if you don't have the master, you cannot learn it. While classical, you can learn it without the master because you have the books. So that is what you need to be close to
Yes.
master to understand it, because especially the more you move to the east, the more empirical it gets. Still, if
Yeah.
you to Western Islamic architecture is very much derived from late antiquity, so you can extract some classical rules from it. So there
Yes,
is a
Professor.
relation.
So I could be see that the reason behind this all that the more you move towards the east, it become more empirical.
Yeah,
It is maybe due to the difference
what
between the wisdom and knowledge.
yeah.
Wisdom is which you spirit, and that's always have a specific time on you. That's nothing something you can own it. Like this is my wisdom. This is something gifted to you by your God, and just give you the path to work on it, and go to that direction. So that is something which is very fascinating regarding the imperialism while in traditional architecture. So
Yeah.
that might be will be the reason that more you move towards the east side, you become more empirical.
Yeah. I mean, I had never thought on that, but you're completely right, and it's very interesting because it's also been the difference between East and West, and links as well with what you say about the identity, because identity is very important. Keeping your identity without falling into the stereotype, it is very important, no? Because it's like you want to do, because it's like, imagine, no, it's like, and the Middle East, especially Bahrain is trying to do it very well. No, Bahrain wants to promote a lot his traditional architecture, and what happens, I mean, these countries, Bahrain, the United Emirates, Qatar, Dubai, they were small countries, they were small ports, which the only architecture they had was the house of the chief and a couple of fortresses. So what is what you want to promote from there? But I think especially in Bahrain, they have managed to extract principles from the very little remains that they have of their past. They have extracted principles and projected it to new forms, new buildings, new regulations. And it's working, it's very interesting, especially what they're doing, as I say, especially in Bahrain. In Qatar and Dubai and Abu Dhabi, they are doing stuff, but it's not the same. But Qatar is very interesting. Bahrain is very interesting because they have so little, and they have done so much with so little, that it's quite remarkable. No, you go to Qatar and you have much more. You go to Dubai and you have much more, even if it is not much. But compared with Bahrain, you have much more traditional architecture. So it's very interesting. All what the Royal House of Bahrain has been doing to promote a new architecture for Bahrain that is not the bling bling that you see in all these halal Las Vegas, that is a lot of the Persian Gulf. I like calling it like a halal Las Vegas, because it's very much the bling bling of Las Vegas, but without any of the buys. So that's a bit it, and then links with what's the identity, or what's the identity nowadays, because a lot of people also talk about Japan, and they're fascinated about Japan, and they think that when you are going to Japan, you're going to live like, name here your favorite anime, especially if it is old. And then you realize that Japan is a completely westernized, modernized, post-capitalist or ultra-capitalist society, that everything has been turned down, all is concrete, concrete, concrete and glass, and that people have kept that tradition in a sort of virtual limbo. That identity is in a virtual limbo, and it's a miracle that they have survived. I mean, but that also can explain as well why Japanese are also a bit reluctant to have foreigners, because they don't like foreigners. They tolerate tourists, but they normally don't like foreigners. Obviously, I mean, they were isolated for 300 years, and they were forced to open to the world. They would have been very happy to stay isolated. But what they have now is like, if you want, you can go to Tokyo and eat the same thing that you can eat in London, and the same thing that you can eat in New York. And that's, I don't know, some people might find it fascinating. I find it a bit like boring. It's, so that's a bit the problem that you have with the loss of identity. And it's not only something that you carry in your head, it needs to manifest in material ways to continue creating that identity without falling into stereotypes. And we can talk, I mean, we can talk about the stereotypes that each of us have. And I mean, and even within the same country, we have different stereotypes, etc., etc. So without falling into the stereotypes, you need to keep the identity. You need to know the place where you are. So if you're going to a place which is South Asia, it's not that it needs to look like South Asia, but it needs to give a response to South Asian needs. And right now, modernism, no matter how much they say that they do, it doesn't. So you go to Chandigarh and you go to Brasilia, and you're having the same thing, not to say other thing. But then you go to Calcutta, or you go to Mumbai, and then you go to Sao Paulo, and you go to Rio de Janeiro, and you find things completely different. That's identity. So
Similarly, Lahore.
sorry?
Lahore.
Or, but that's what I mean. You find that's the identity of the place, not Chandigarh, and they still they still force us to sell it. That the parliament in Chandigarh, the parliament in Brasilia, the buildings in Brasilia are the new identity of Brazil or India, or you name the country. So it can come to the ridiculous effect that you're having in Cairo with the new Egyptian museum that actually looks like a shopping mall, like Egyptian Revival 1980 shopping mall with all these massive hieroglyphics and things posted around. It looks like it has been done by a kid, literally, and they have spent millions on that museum, and it seems that they don't even take themselves seriously about it, considering as well how serious is the Egyptian Department of Antiquities. So the identity is very important. To keep your identity without falling into the stereotype is difficult. It's difficult. No, it's like I have this conversation a lot with Brazilians about what is the identity of Brazilian architecture. No, because Brazil is a very big country. Is it Rio? Is it Sao Paulo? Is it Ouro Preto? Is it Petrópolis? Is it Brasilia? Is it Xuxa and Carmen Miranda, or is it something else? So that's what what you need to think. Same thing as you would say, what's the identity of Portugal? Is it Cristiano Ronaldo? Are we basing the whole identity, Portuguese identity, on Cristiano Ronaldo, or the Argentinian identity in Maradona? Just to put big stereotypes, no? Is independently or Messi? Or, I mean, I would say no. Maradona is a bit more comic character than Messi, no? That what I would put the stereotype. So or you would say, I mean, what's the stereotype of, or would we, or is it Salazar, the stereotype of Portugal, and Franco, the stereotype of Spain? No, I'm sure that Portugal has much interesting rulers than Salazar, and Spain, of course, has much more interesting rulers than Franco. But that's a bit the identity versus the stereotypes. So that's very important to keep. So, gentlemen, I think we have come to the end. We'll see you next Thursday, 15th of March. We will be talking a little bit about floor plans, about what can you expect from a floor plan, which is going to be mostly a little bit of seeing some key floor plans that are interesting sources for floor plans, and how to deal with evil open kitchen. I don't know what you think about open kitchens, but we're going to talk about what do you do when you are asked by your client that they want to have an open plan but classical, and you don't know how to tell them that that's not going to work. But we'll talk about that.
Thank you, Pablo. Looking forward for the next session.
Thank you very much. The recording will be available on YouTube at some point. We will inform you. There will be shorts, except on Instagram, on Escuela de Arquitectura Clásica accounts, where you get the highlights of the class. And I'll see you soon. I mean, and we'll have Sohaib, who will be talking us about his very interesting work that I hope all of you will find as interesting as I'm finding it. And until then, well, thank you very much, and have a good rest of the weekend. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much,
Professor. Thank you.
and happy
you.
Ramadan, Sohaib.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor. Thank you. So nice of
So
you.
thank you very much, and I'll see all of you soon. As usual, if you have any question, anything, you can ask them through the group. We're active 24/7. We're more 16, 6. But yeah, we are there to answer. Not only me, there is a lot of colleagues who are very happy to answer. And thank you very much for being here one more week. And I'll see you in 2 weeks' time, or we will see each other in all the multiple events that we see. And remember to check, I will put it in the group as well, the free classes on Eventbrite. You will like them.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you very much. Bye bye, everyone.